Ryan Snyder logged an official RPM pick for the Penn State Nittany Lions. So Ryan, who is going to be the latest Penn State football player to join the class of 2025, in your opinion?
Well, it's certainly not a lock yet, but we did log a pick for Lex Cyrus today. Don't think that should be a massive surprise for people who follow us closely. Great official visit last week. He is still going to South Carolina this upcoming weekend. I still feel like it's going to take a lot, though, for the Gamecocks to end up beating out Penn State. Long story short, I think family likes the idea of him staying close to home. I think he likes that idea as well. Certainly get the impression that this could be over, in a week or so from now. But he is going to South Carolina this weekend, so let's see if something changes there. Normally, I wouldn't log a pick though before an official visit to another school. So I think that kind of shows the confidence there. Sean hit on that as well in his notebook earlier this week. I mean, it's everything right now from Susquehanna side of it to Penn State side of it. Seems to be pretty confident that he's going to end up a Nittany Lion when it's all said and done.
Fitz, we talked about that earlier this week, I think, and you were of a similar mindset, were you not?
Yeah, I talked about that in my notes on Monday. I just think he was most likely going in, and I think he's most likely coming out as well. Like, I think this is a situation when you look and, all these guys, it's really interesting to watch the fabric of this recruitment or all these recruitments, because it's every guy making the best decision for themselves. And we kind of lose sight of that sometimes when we follow 50 to 100 kids every cycle pretty closely. So it's everyone making the best decision. So you're going to see him take that trip to South Carolina. But I still think logically, from as an in-state kid that can run like this, has been a priority for Penn State for a long time. T. Frank, you and I broke down our favorite wide receiver prospects yesterday, and he was on both of our lists, albeit I think it was 4 for you and 2 for me. He's very high on the list for Penn State, and this is one of those ones that you got to lock down, and one of those ones that you logically should be able to, and then should be able to close the door on it.
He was his speed, his ability to create explosive plays. It fits into what Penn State has looked for from a wide receiver. One of the things, just looking at him on film, is despite the fact that he isn't a 6'5" wide receiver, some of these tall guys we've talked about, I think he's got a great frame. I think he's got great length, so he can play a little bigger than he is eventually, and that's something that Marques Hagans could develop in him as a football player, somebody who maybe a little slighter frame than some of the players that they've hosted recently. How do you think he fits into this class, guys? Ryan, from a receiver standpoint, from what's left on the board, if they were to pick up Lex Cyrus and put him with Lyrick Samuel, how do you think this then shakes out as far as positions that are left and maybe some of the dominoes you see from there?
I have him as a slot guy. I think most of us would assume that's kind of where he ends up. I mean, Romero Eson was the other one that they were really kind of looking at as far as a slot guy. He ends up at USC. I think there was maybe 1 or 2 others. I'm not thinking off the top of my head, but Lex has always kind of been that top target. Is the guy that can fit that role. You have Lyrick Samuel then, who's kind of the taller, lengthier guy, stretch the field, and then you got the Outtens and the Jeff Exinors who can kind of fit a couple different roles. But to me, yeah, he's a slot guy, very shifty, lots of speed. I could see him doing a lot of different things, jet sweeps, all types of stuff.
Fitz, we talked about how he's a bit of a raw prospect. Do you see it the same way as Ryan?
I think so. Yeah, I talked about it yesterday. He's still coming along, and I will say this on his behalf. He came to camp last year, and obviously coming off of a state title in the 100 meters. So we think track guy that's just coming out here and showing his speed. But his football toolbox was better than I expected. So I was impressed by that. I think he continues to do that. I think he's working to get better as a football player. In this offseason, he's been all over the place with 7-on-7s, and it's not just been focus on repeating that track gold medal, which I think he ended up 3rd in the state in the 100 this year. So to me, that's a good sign, because it's about the commitment to football. So I'm excited to see his development. Like I said, there are some things that don't come as naturally to him, but running very fast comes very naturally to him, and that's something that every roster wants.
Yeah,
T-Frank, I'm sorry. Let me chime in real quick. Look, I had a talk with his coach, Joe Hayden, about that a couple weeks ago. I think the best example of him committing to football was the fact that he did a college showcase at his school the night before the District 3 championship started. I mean, he was out there running routes for an hour and a half plus, maybe. So I think that kind of shows, where his focus has been. As his coach kind of hit it at as well, like, a year ago when he was going and he did win the state championship for track, it wasn't nearly as focused on football training throughout the spring. And this year it's been, I don't want to say the exact opposite. He was training obviously a little bit last year, but it's been much more focused on, getting on the jugs machine, after track, before track, whatever it may be. He's been consistently focused on football for the last couple of months, where, a year ago it was a little more leaning towards track.
How beneficial is that, Fitz, that he has that track background, but he has made that focus switch? And does that lead to maybe the best outcome for his football career?
We've seen track guys come in and be track guys, and that doesn't work for football, because football takes a different mindset, takes a different set of skills, and anything that you can use that to build up your arsenal of football skills, I mean, you got to do it, because this is the highest level.
Ryan asked this question. Ryan Sheard says, are these regional wide receivers nationally elite or just the best in the region? Let's be honest, these dudes aren't considering the top schools in the country. When it comes to, I think he's specifically talking about Lex Cyrus, Jeff Exinor, some of the guys in the region, maybe even if you want to extend down to Virginia, to Matthew Outten. I guess, where do they stack up with some of the other guys that Penn State is recruiting as part of this national versus regional buckets that you've talked about, Fitz?
I think it goes back to how hard it is, how seemingly easy it is to evaluate wide receivers, because there's so many of them, and, a lot of guys have success, but a lot of them flame out too. So it's like, it's very hit and miss. So you look back and you see the guys in the region that, Penn State lost Julian Fleming to Ohio State, and that was the crippling blow that, destroyed the program or whatever. But, he didn't turn out being that guy, where they plucked Jahan Dotson from UCLA. Like, this is not an exact science. And I think I think we've gotten better at trying to find these guys, but we haven't gotten perfect at it. And schools are in that list as well. They haven't been that. I mean, Justin Shorter was a 5-star guy, kind of flamed out here, and went to Florida and wasn't anything special there. Chris Godwin picked Penn State over South Carolina. There's no formula here. I do like the traits that these guys show. I'm very I'm more excited than I thought I'd be on Lyrick Samuel, and I think it might take a little bit longer for a tall guy that's got to fill out to get there. But he shows some traits. Then you got the flip side. You got Jeff Exinor, who's already developed, already built 217 pounds, 6'2", 217 pounds. Kind of on the flip side of that, is he, going to outgrow the position? So there's a lot of things here that kind of make sense from, hey, this guy could be really good, but that's the position. There were guys I thought Anthony Ivey was going to be really good, and the jury remains out on that. But this is not as simple as it may appear. I would say that. But here's what I'll add. This is one thing Charles always kind of hits on when I talk wide receivers with him. Charles Power, he's our scouting director at On3. He basically says, if you're a top 40 wide receiver in the country, that, it kind of equates to being a top 10, top 15 player at so many other positions, just because of how deep wide receiver is. So keep that in mind when you're looking. Yeah, dense. I mean, just keep that in mind when you're looking at positional rankings, things like that. The other thing I'll say is that in my mind, I have no doubt in my mind, actually, that Jeff Exeter and Matthew Outten are higher on Penn State's board than a guy like Phillip Bell. Well, look at Phillip Bell's rating. It's higher than those two. We've hit on this so many times in the show. Matthew Outten is still underrated by On3. It's something that we will continue to chip away at. There's just so many limited resources on Outten that it makes it hard for us to just jump him up there, right? But I will note, 24/7 has him up, as a top 150 player. And the feedback I get from people who scout way more than I do is that that's more accurate than On3's high 3-star rating. So keep that in mind as well. Cyrus is already ranked really high in the class, almost too high, I would think, actually, when I compare to what I think of Outten and some other people. Not that he's too high. I think he's an on 300 guy, but when I look at him being 115 and I see Outten being a 3-star, that doesn't compute to me, just again from the information we gather, or at least how Penn State sees it. So all of them are very important. We'll see where things go. As Sean said, there's no exact science to it. One of them will hit, one of them might not. And if you want to see how tough it is, look at, I think, Alabama's receiver recruiting from 2021 to 23. None of those guys are with the program anymore, maybe 2020 to 22. But it's tough for even the best programs. And Ohio State, it's just another testament to the job that Brian Hartline's been able to do. Now, on the flip side, you turn that around and you say, Brian Hartline took Desi Jones from Jersey, who I think is a good player, but I was surprised by that. So everybody's got their own evaluations and everybody's kind of figuring out what fits with their system. And it's really interesting. Quincy Porter might not be a guy that Ohio State would take. I mean, I'm just kind of throwing that out there. I don't know if that's the case or not, but everybody's got their own evaluations, and
profile and preference aren't the same thing when it comes to recruiting.
Yes, it's like talent and production, sometimes not the same. And you see that probably more at receiver than any other position. That was a good question by Ryan.